The air on Virelia 7 always smelled faintly of singed cactus and hot plastic, which made sense, considering the entire Western Hemisphere had once been a failed terraforming test site. Now it was just home to dust storms, broken research stations, and the occasional exiled cartel botanist. I wasn't there for the sightseeing. I was mapping fault lines. My AI mocks liked to say I had the most boring job in 3 galaxies, which was true until I found her. It started like most of my bad decisions, with a shortcut. "There's a canyon up ahead," Mox said in my ear, dry as ever. "The old hover road-'s gone. Maybe don't do that thing where you act like you know better than satellite data." "I appreciate your concern," I muttered, already steering the bike down the slope. "But the satellite doesn't see this charming footpath right here." "That's not a footpath, that's an erosion scar. It's interpretive." 3 minutes later, I was half buried in sand, my bike wedged into a thorn bush that hissed at me. Yes, hissed. Everything on this planet was either angry or had a thorn-to-photon ratio higher than safety regulations allowed. While I was pulling cactus needles out of my leg and grumbling about AI superiority complexes, I heard the sound. It wasn't loud, not even distinct at first, more like a rustling cough filtered through a broken speaker. Then came the glow, a faint shimmer of blue-pink light pulsing between the rocks like a glitch in the atmosphere. I should have ignored it. I really should have. Instead, I followed it. The wreckage was half buried in sand and badly camouflaged, its hull blinking with the soft desperation of failing tech. Whatever had crashed here wasn't from the local quadrant. Its design was curved and organic, as if it had grown rather than been built. The cockpit was cracked open like a broken egg, and inside, tangled in shattered metal and coiled fiber optics, was Asterisk her. Her skin shifted colors like a deep-sea creature, swirls of violet and cyan, pale where she was wounded. Her hair, if that's what you called it, was translucent and drifted around her like smoke, or maybe memory. One arm hung limp, the silvery fluid leaking from it steaming faintly on the rocks. Her eyes were the only solid thing about her, molten gold, open and staring straight at me. She didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. I knelt down slowly. "Hi," I said, because I'm a genius under pressure. "I'm not here to finish the crash job, just curious." Still no movement. I pulled a small ration pack from my belt and held it up. "Food." I shook it. Nutrient paste, flavor, disappointment. She blinked once, progress. Then I reached for my canteen and set it near her hand. That got a response. She looked down, then up at me again, and then slowly, very slowly, moved her fingers toward it. I figured that was good, until she collapsed. Panic isn't a great look on me, especially when it involves an alien with no clear anatomy. I fumbled, unstrapped my medkit, and started scanning. The readings made no sense, temperature fluctuating, pulse erratic, cells regenerating mid-scan. I patched her arm as best I could, using the last of my clean gauze and, regrettably, the sleeve of my only breathable shirt. "There," I said, sitting back. "Now you look marginally less like you're dying. You're welcome." Her eyes opened again. Locked on mine. There was a pause, a stretch of silence that made the air feel too thick. Then she reached out, touched my arm lightly, and said a single word I didn't understand. It sounded like wind and steel and maybe a vowel or two. And then she passed out again. I stared at her. Mox crackled into my ear. "You did it again." "Did what?" "Made a terrible decision out of pity and shirtless goodwill. Shall I start recording your eulogy?" "I just helped someone who crash-landed and is clearly not doing great." "Yes, and in doing so, you may have just proposed marriage." "What?" "To her species. That's how Durellari bonding works." I looked back at the girl. Her bioluminescent skin glowed gently under the setting suns. I sighed. She didn't even say thank you. The next morning she was gone. Correction, she was no longer in the ship. She was standing 10 feet from my bedroll, perfectly still, staring at me like a cat who just figured out how to open doors. I jumped. She tilted her head. Morning." She blinked once. "Do you need something?" She didn't respond. Just walked over to me, knelt down, and very ceremoniously offered back my canteen. Empty. She placed it in my hands like it was a priceless heirloom. Then she sat cross-legged next to me and didn't move. "I think she's claiming territory," Mox said in my ear. "And you're the territory." I tried to stand. She stood. I started packing. She mimicked my every move. At one point, I pretended to walk away in the opposite direction. She didn't even blink, just followed step for step, silent, watching. "Okay, look," I said finally. You're welcome for the first aid, really, but I don't do clingy relationships. I travel light, nomadic life, space bachelor, no offense. What? She reached out and tapped the patch I'd put on her arm, then tapped my chest. Mox gasped theatrically. Oh no, she's bonded. To what? To you, you socially bankrupt gazelle. I sat down and put my face in my hands. Okay, I muttered. Okay, let's say I've accidentally alien-engaged someone. What's the etiquette here? Return the ring, challenge her father in a duel, fill out a form. I believe the term is too late. When I looked up, she was still there. Still watching, still glowing faintly with that strange, subtle light that pulsed with her breath. Well, I said, this is fine. She reached into her ruined ship and pulled out a curved blade made of some iridescent metal. She offered it to me like a gift. Then she sat back down next to me and stared at the horizon as if we had always traveled together. Mox let out a long sigh. I'm naming her Wifey Prime. Shut up. What? Wifey Prime and the cartographer of questionable judgment. I'm turning you off. You won't, you need someone to complain to. She wasn't wrong. And so we walked, the alien girl beside me, silent and glowing and unblinking. I tried to ignore her. She mirrored my every step. I tried to tell myself it was temporary. It was, but that came later after the fish-throwing incident, after the growling, after the mating dance. For now, there was just the sound of our footsteps on red sand, the low hum of the desert wind, and the increasingly uncomfortable certainty that I was never going to be single again. I tried everything. Detours, hand signals, impromptu games of hide-and-seek. I even faked a twisted ankle and dramatically collapsed behind a boulder just to see if she'd go away. She didn't. She crouched beside me and poked my foot like she was trying to reboot it. When I winced for dramatic effect, she nodded solemnly, then pulled a small vial from her belt and poured a glowing green gel over my boot. The pain wasn't real, but the gel definitely was. It hissed, smoked, and ate halfway through the sole before I could yank the thing off. Okay, I hissed, hopping on one foot. Let's add acid to the list of things not to apply without asking. She tilted her head, mimicked my hopping, and made a small sound that might have been laughter, or indigestion. I couldn't tell. Mox, I grunted, jamming my foot into a spare boot. What do I do with her? You could try explaining human social boundaries. I did twice. She just nodded and offered me dried meat. That's bonding behavior. Congratulations, she's feeding you. Out of curiosity, I asked, watching her lay a small perimeter of shiny stones around our makeshift camp. What does it take to un-asterisk bond with a Durellari? Well, Mox replied with infuriating calm, death. Yours, possibly hers, or a council hearing on their homeworld that involves 3 high priests and a lava eel. So none of the easy options. She returned and sat beside me, brushing a smudge off my cheek with the same solemnity someone might use to deactivate a bomb. Then she handed me a chunk of dried something and stared until I ate it. It tasted like salted regret. We reached the edge of a trade outpost 2 days later. I had hoped, desperately, naively, that a bit of civilization might snap the bond or at least distract her. Maybe she'd see a shiny drone and wander off. Or get lured into a spa. But no. As soon as the guard waved us in, she closed the distance between us like a heat-seeking missile and took my hand. I froze. She didn't look at me. Just stood there, expression unreadable, grip firm. I tried to pull away gently. She growled. A low, unmistakable growl. It wasn't loud, but the guard, twice my size, cybernetic and unimpressed by most things, took a cautious step back. Friendly, I said, smiling nervously. Totally normal bonding custom from her culture. Ha, aren't cultural misunderstandings asterisk hilarious? The guard raised an eyebrow, scanned her, and blinked at the readings. You traveling with a War-Tier hybrid. War-Tier? She's part Durellari, part something else. Unregistered species. You got clearance for that kind of... He glanced at our clasped hands. Relationship. I turned slowly to Mox. What's a War-Tier hybrid? Exactly what it sounds like, she replied. Built to win fights and confuse boyfriends. I smiled weakly. We're just stopping in for supplies, quick in, quick out. Gee, yes, I'd started calling her that. It seemed easier than Hey You or Wifey Prime. Tightened her grip as we entered the bustling inner market. The place was loud, chaotic, and smelled like spiced algae and oil. Vendors shouted offers in 20 languages, drones buzzed overhead, and a street band played what sounded like angry banjos having a political debate. Ji took it all in silently, but her grip didn't loosen. I led her to a supply stall and tried to act casual as I bartered for rations and spare boot gel, non-corrosive this time. The merchant, a lean woman with glowing tattoos and a cyber eye, gave me a smile. "Hard to miss you too," she said. "That your mate?" "Oh no, she's just—" I paused. "I mean, it's not official. There's been no ceremony, no lava eels." She growled. The merchant blinked. "Huh, that sounded official." "Yeah, she does that. It's a whole cultural thing." "Uh-huh, well, you might want to rein her in." "Why?" "Because she's about to throw my fish." I turned. She was standing beside a barrel of vacuum-packed fish tubes. A man, some random local with more guts than sense, had apparently brushed against me in the crowd. Nothing major, just a nudge. But G was holding a fish tube in one hand like a baton and baring her teeth. "G," I said gently. "Let's not throw fish." She didn't move. "G, it's a crowded market. Accidents happen. We don't need to escalate." She sniffed the fish, snorted. Then, with one elegant, lightning-fast motion, she launched the tube across the square. It struck the man dead in the chest, knocking him backward into a crate of fruit. There was a stunned silence, then a slow clap. Someone in the crowd yelled, 10 points. I was escorted to a holding cell within the hour. She wasn't arrested. Apparently, her species, diplomatic status, exempted her from local law enforcement. I, on the other hand, was placed in a room with a very bored guard and told to rethink my choices. Mox took the opportunity to project herself onto the wall. Her avatar, a small floating orb with tiny sarcastic eyebrows, hovered above me. Fish-based assault, that's new. She was protecting me. Sure, from fruit proximity. She's just confused. It's a cultural thing. Are you sure you're not the one who's confused? I slumped back against the wall. I was just being decent. She was hurt. And now she's bonded to you for life. Not for life, just until we find her people and explain the misunderstanding. Mox floated closer. You really believe that? I looked at the door, then down at the fish residue still smeared on my shirt. I have to believe something. An hour later, the guard let me out with a warning and a voucher for a new shirt. G was waiting outside. She looked at me, then handed me a packet of food, real food, paid for. She de-traded something for it, though I didn't want to know what. She motioned for me to eat. I took a bite. It tasted like burned noodles and citrus. "Delicious," I muttered. She smiled. That night we camped outside the outpost. She sat beside me under the strange stars, sharpening her blade with rhythmic care. I stared up at the sky and sighed. "You know," I said softly, "this isn't how I pictured my week going." She didn't respond, but thanks for the food. And the fish thing, maybe not the fish thing, still, thanks. She reached out, tapped the patch on her arm I'd mended, then tapped her chest. I didn't understand the words she said next, but they sounded softer, lighter. Mox translated with a sigh. She said, "My fire is your fire." I blinked. "That's either poetic," I said slowly, "or a warning." "She means it both ways." Of course she did. The next morning I woke up to find her holding my boot, not trying to steal it, not trying to destroy it, just holding it, like it was a newborn bird or a sacred relic. She glanced at me when I sat up, then handed it over with the solemnity of a high priest blessing a toaster. "Thanks," I said, sliding it on and immediately noticing the inside had been stuffed with some sort of alien moss. It was warm, slightly slimy, but weirdly refreshing. "She's improved your footwear," Mox said in my ear, "emotionally and biologically." I tightened the straps and stood. It's like walking on memory foam and sushi. She stood, too. She was always up before me. Either she didn't sleep or she did it with her eyes open like some horror movie marsupial. I wasn't sure. She'd already dismantled our makeshift shelter, arranged our gear into an absurdly efficient pack formation, and apparently hunted breakfast. Something long and leggy was roasting over a plasma coil. She held out a stick of meat. I took it. It was surprisingly tender, also faintly luminous. "Is it supposed to glow?" She tilted her head and nodded. I chewed slowly. "Tastes like vengeance." She blinked, clearly satisfied. We were halfway across the Crimson Flats by midday, on our way to a buried satellite node I needed to extract. Standard mapping contract, my specialty. Low pay, low risk, low social contact, which, ironically, was the exact opposite of my current situation. G walked beside me in perfect sync, not a step ahead, not a step behind. When we stopped to scan the ground for seismic anomalies, she circled the perimeter like a sentry. When a dust snake popped out of the sand, she threw a rock at it so hard it turned into *2* snakes. I tried to thank her. She grunted and tossed me the second half of her lunch. "Still think she's gonna get bored and leave?" Mox asked. "No, I'm beginning to think she's adopted me." That's not how it works. Oh, I know, I'm the pet. G suddenly pointed to the horizon. I squinted. A speck of movement. One of the old terraforming drones, low and dragging, probably scavenging metal from the abandoned facility ahead. We made camp at the edge of the ruins. Not because I needed rest, but because G had gone full predator mode and started scanning everything with the blade end of her weapon. I didn't argue. You think there's something in there? I asked. She nodded once. Something dangerous. Another nod. Cool, cool. Just once, I'd like to approach a building on this planet and not assume it's full of death. Mox chimed in. Statistically, 1 in 4 Violian structures is haunted, radioactive, or carnivorous. Haunted. Rogue AI constructs with outdated etiquette subroutines. They tend to get clingy. I groaned. The ruins were mostly intact, jagged towers poking out of sand, solar panels long since cracked and devoured by the climate. My scanner beeped as we entered. The node should be under the old command center. G kept close, too close. I bumped into her twice trying to maneuver through collapsed walls. The third time she just grabbed my arm and guided me like I was an unusually clumsy toddler. Appreciate the assist, I muttered. She grunted. A happy grunt, a judging one, impossible to tell. The command center was half buried in rubble, but the console was still there, its interface dead but not completely fried. I connected Mox through a port and waited. Careful, I said. Don't fry the node. I'm still getting paid for this. I always handle old tech gently, Mox replied. Unlike you with relationships. G perked up at the word. Don't translate that, I hissed. No promises. The console buzzed, sparked, and then came to life with a flickering holographic interface. I began downloading the seismic data. That's when G stiffened. She pointed again. This time it wasn't a drone. It was a hovercraft, military-grade, low-altitude, stealth pattern hull. It swept over the flats in a slow arc, circled, then disappeared behind the ruins. That, Mox said, is not a scavenger. I noticed. G was already pulling me away from the console. I yanked the node out just in time as the system shorted out, its energy core frying with a bang. We ducked into the shadows as 2 figures approached, humanoid, armored, helmets reflective. One of them held a scanner. She's being tracked, I whispered. She didn't move. Should we run? She looked at me, raised her weapon, and made a motion that I could only interpret as we stay. We mess them up. Then we go eat more glowy meat. The 2 figures entered the room. G vanished from my side. I panicked. Again, it's kind of my default state. Then the first figure let out a noise, half choke, half shout, and flew backward through the doorway like he'd been punted by a giant shoe. The second drew a weapon. G dropped from the ceiling, literally from the ceiling. There was a blur of movement, a clang, a yell, a crash, then silence. G stepped back into the room, dragging 2 unconscious soldiers like bags of laundry. I'm starting to see why your people don't do dating apps, I said. She dropped the bodies and walked over to me. What now? I asked. She pointed at the soldiers' hovercraft outside. Oh, I see, I said. You want to steal the ship of the people chasing you. Bold, I like that. We loaded up quickly. She set the coordinates using alien glyphs I couldn't read. Mox whistled in my ear. She just set course for an encrypted point 2 sectors out. You sure you want to follow this? She just saved my life. She also threw a fish at someone last week. Look, she's got layers. You're going to get vaporized. Probably, but at least I'll be vaporized in style. G sat beside me in the cockpit. Her fingers moved gracefully over the controls. She didn't smile, but something in her posture relaxed. I'd seen her glow before, but now it was warmer, like her pulse was syncing with the hum of the ship. I leaned back. So, just to be clear, we're stealing a ship, fleeing unknown pursuers, and heading toward a mystery destination that may or may not involve more people like you. She nodded, and we'd been flying for what felt like 3 eternities and a half snack when I finally decided to ask the question that had been haunting me since takeoff. So, I said, breaking the silence, are we going to a family reunion or a secret rebel base, or, I don't know, your ex-boyfriend's birthday party? She didn't answer. She never did when I was trying to be clever. She sat in the co-pilot's seat, one hand resting lightly on the controls, gaze fixed ahead. Her skin glowed a steady pulse of blue, not angry red, not anxious green. Just blue. I was beginning to read her like a mood ring. Mox buzzed in my earpiece. I vote for Rebel Base. Family reunions don't usually involve stealth routes and plasma mines. You've never been to my Aunt Salma's. Touché. I leaned back, legs stretched, watching the stars smear past the viewport. The stolen hovercraft was smoother than any of the scrap ships I'd rented. Either the people chasing Xi were well-funded professionals, or interior design enthusiasts with a taste for chrome and silent chairs. "You ever going to explain why we're being hunted?" I asked casually. "Or are we just embracing the mystery, riding the adrenaline wave?" Xi didn't blink, didn't flinch. She just reached into the side panel, pulled out a sealed packet, and handed it to me. I opened it. A protein bar, lemon-flavored. I stared at it. "Wow, this is emotional progress." She tilted her head. "You gave me a snack. That's practically a love letter in human culture." She blinked once, then pulled out a second bar and started unwrapping it with terrifying precision. Mox sighed. "Your relationship is built entirely on bandages and processed food. Some people have less." An alert pinged. Xi's fingers darted over the control panel and the ship slowed. Outside, a scattering of metallic structures floated in orbit around a small, dead moon. The architecture wasn't human. Too smooth, too symmetrical, and humming with that eerie blue glow I was starting to associate with "this may explode at any moment." The docking clamps extended automatically as we approached. Xi tapped a code into the console. The system responded by singing. Literally. A melodic tone echoed through the ship like someone had programmed an AI soprano into the security system. It ended with a chime and the clamps locked into place. "I don't know whether to be impressed or creeped out," I muttered. "Both are valid," Mox replied. The airlock hissed open. Xi stepped out first, blade holstered but hand never far from it. I followed, because at this point I had fully accepted my role as the sidekick in whatever genre of story this was. Probably space opera. Maybe interstellar romantic comedy with light stabbing. Inside, the station was silent, dustless. Every surface gleamed. Strange symbols lined the walls, some etched, others pulsing faintly like neural networks made of light. Xi walked with purpose, her boots making no sound on the metallic floor. Mine, unfortunately, squeaked. "I feel underdressed," I whispered. "You are underdressed," Mox said. "Your shirt is still scorched from the console fire, and your jacket has a snack stain. Protein bar leakage is a serious issue." Xi led us to a chamber where a circular pedestal rose from the floor. She placed her hand on it, and a holographic field flared to life, spinning symbols, flickering images, and what looked suspiciously like DNA helixes, except they were asterisk-braided, interlocked like a double helix doing a tango. "I'm getting partial translation," Mox murmured. "Something about splicing, forbidden synthesis, and a warning not to attempt this at home." Xi stood there silently, eyes fixed on the display. Her skin had shifted again, dark violet with veins of silver light running down her arms. I stepped closer. That looks like your genetic code, doesn't it?" She nodded slowly. "And the extra helix," Mox answered before she could. "Artificial, not Durellari, not even native to this system." "Well, that's comforting." She turned to me, then to the console. She tapped a few sequences and a new image flared up, a facility vast and dark orbiting a gas giant. Surveillance footage. Inside, creatures in containment tanks. Some looked like Xi, others didn't. "Experiments," I whispered. She looked at me and for the first time since the crash spoke more than one word. "Wrong inside." Her voice was rough, accented, but clear. "You mean the splicing? You were modified against your will." She nodded. I sat down on a bench that materialized from the floor. "Okay, that's heavy." There was a silence, then Mox beeped. "You're taking this surprisingly well. I once accidentally attended a wedding where the groom was a sentient mushroom. This ranks maybe third on my weird scale." Xi approached the console again. More images. One in particular caught her attention, a shadowed figure, tall, robed, and surrounded by scientists. The face was blurred, intentional. The symbol on the robe, however, was clear. A triangle, inverted, inside it a swirling black dot. Mox hissed. "Sable directive." "Wait, that's real?" I asked. "I thought that was just a conspiracy, some kind of myth cooked up by frontier smugglers and chatroom trolls." "Nope, real and bad, very, very bad." She turned to me. "They find me." "They will find you." She nodded. "Well, you're not exactly hiding," I said. "You've been glow-stalking me across 3 regions. You threw a fish at a man." She looked down. "Oh no, don't be embarrassed, that was my favorite part." She managed the smallest of smirks, then held out a small, square object, a data chip. "What's this?" I asked, taking it. She tapped my chest. "Keep." Mox scanned it. "Encrypted, deep layer, I'll need time." I pocketed it. "Let me guess, backup plan." She nodded. If I break. I frowned. Break how? She pointed to her head, then her chest, then held up both hands, palms up, as if showing me they were empty. I'm not letting that happen, I said quietly. She blinked. Mox whispered in my ear. That was surprisingly noble. I'm full of surprises. Also caffeine and misplaced optimism. We returned to the ship in silence. G piloted us away from the station without another word. I sat back in my chair, chip still in my hand, stomach still turning. After a while, I broke the silence. So, do you still have that other protein bar? G handed it over without looking at me. I'm starting to think this is your love language, I said. She reached out, smudged a bit of dried protein from my cheek with her thumb, then went back to piloting. Mox sighed. If you two kiss, I'm turning off every interior camera on this ship. Relax, I said, unwrapping the bar. We're light years from anything romantic. Right now, we're just two people against a galaxy-wide conspiracy. She reached over and adjusted my collar. And she's grooming you, Mox added. Very romantic. I chewed my protein bar and tried not to think about DNA, secret labs, or ominous triangles. For now, I focused on the simple things, like not crashing, and maybe surviving long enough to figure out how I became the accidental boyfriend of a genetically modified space warrior. We landed in the middle of nowhere. Again. Well, technically it was the Uxrani expanse, but calling it that was just space cartographer language for blank part of the map where weird things happen and nobody sends thank you cards. Xi entered the coordinates without explanation. I, being the responsible adult I am, voiced my deep concern by asking if there were snacks on this planet. She didn't answer. She was too busy checking her weapons and muttering phrases in a language that sounded like music composed by a disgruntled AI with emotional issues. Mox chimed in. Sensors show light atmospheric haze, some minor radiation pockets, and a whole lot of nothing. Welcome to the galactic equivalent of a haunted basement. Why are we here again? She said she needed something. Right, that explains everything. Xi didn't explain. We stepped off the ship and into a field of strange, color-shifting grass that tickled the ankles and whispered compliments. I'm not kidding. One blade of grass told me I had confident footsteps. I nearly left, but Xi pressed on, leading us toward a hill that shimmered as we approached. A structure phased into view, a cloaked building made of curved panels and light, like someone had folded a Stargate into a small hut. I muttered, of course it's invisible. Why wouldn't it be invisible? She turned, old home. I blinked, this was your home. She nodded once, then raised her hand. The entrance melted open. Inside was dim, warm, and full of blinking devices that looked like furniture if furniture had feelings. One wall lit up as we entered, cycling through glowing patterns that reminded me of a heartbeat. Mox scanned. Power source still active. Age unknown. This place is alive, semi-organic tech, like the kind outlawed in most systems. Xi walked over to a console and placed her hand on it. A small projection flared up, static images of others like her. Faces. Fragments of laughter, children with shimmering eyes. One of them looked exactly like her, but younger. She whispered something. What did she say? I asked. Mox translated softly. They were the first to vanish. I sat down. So this was a sanctuary. Xi didn't respond. Instead, she opened a compartment and pulled out a small orb, silver, veined with faint pulses of purple light. She held it like it was fragile, then walked over and handed it to me. What is it? I asked. She pressed her palm to the orb. A projection bloomed upward, showing a map, different from any galactic chart I'd ever seen. It wasn't coordinates or routes. It was asterisk layers, dimensions. Realms stacked like transparent glass, each moving at a different frequency. Mox gasped. That's not a map. It's a quantum echo field, a record of parallel space anomalies. In language I understand. She's tracking dimensional bleed. Someone has been pulling things, asterisk people asterisk, through fractured space. I turned to Xi, your people. She looked at the map, then pointed to a flickering point on the lowest layer. It pulsed erratically. I said, that looks like a bad place. She nodded, you want to go there? Another nod. I have several objections, starting with my continued existence. Xi didn't move. Okay, I said, cool, you're serious, got it. Mox added helpfully. Statistically, entering a fracture zone has a 72% chance of causing severe trauma, molecular scrambling, or unintentional nudity. I stared. That last one feels oddly specific. I learned from history. We spent the night in the structure. Xi slept lightly, one eye half open, her blade within reach. I lay on a not-quite couch that pulsed in rhythm with my breathing and tried not to think about dimensional death spirals. Around midnight, I sat up and looked at the orb again. It glowed faintly, almost comfortingly. "You think we'll find them?" I whispered. "Your people." Xi's voice came quietly from the dark. "Not all, some." I blinked. "You were awake." "What? Always awake?" "That's horrifying." She sat up, crossed the room, and sat beside me. Her skin glowed soft silver in the dark. "I didn't mean to get involved in this," I said. "You know that, right?" She nodded. "I'm not a hero. I'm not even a decent tour guide." Another nod. "I can barely fix my own ship without accidentally setting off the self-destruct protocol. Twice." She tilted her head, amused. Mox added, "You also once got arrested for trying to eat a forbidden fruit. Literally." It looked like a pear. It was a surveillance drone. Xi reached out and took the orb from my hands. She held it close to her chest. Then she looked at me and said, "You help." "That's not an argument," I said. "It's more like a vague summary of a terrible decision." Her eyes softened. "You stay," she added. I frowned. "Because I'm trapped in a cosmic mess I don't understand." She shook her head. "Because you want to." I didn't respond to that, mostly because I wasn't sure it wasn't true. The next morning, she programmed the ship for the fracture zone. Mox complained. I packed a single bag, mostly snacks and a second pair of pants, just in case the dimensional nudity thing wasn't a joke. As we lifted off, I turned to Xi and asked, "What's the plan when we get there?" She stared ahead. "I fight," she said. "You fly." I nodded. "Right, you fight, I fly. Nothing could go wrong." Mox muttered, famous last words. We broke orbit and angled toward the rift. Somewhere out there, in a realm I didn't understand, something had taken her people. And somehow I, space cartographer, part-time coward, and full-time snack hoarder, had agreed to go after them. Love makes you do weird things. So does guilt, and possibly space radiation. But mostly love, I think. I knew we were getting close when my molars started vibrating. "Dimensional turbulence," Mox said calmly, like she was reading off a weather forecast. "Mild cranial pressure, minor inner ear disorientation, and an extremely high chance of nausea. Would you like me to activate your emergency sickness bag dispenser?" "No," I said through clenched teeth. "I'd like to activate my asterisk get the hell out of here protocol, but apparently that's off the table." Xi didn't flinch. She sat in the pilot's seat, body still, eyes fixed on the churning distortion ahead. The rift looked like someone had sliced open the fabric of space with a spoon heated by regret, twisting, shimmering, and completely unfit for tourism brochures. "You sure we're supposed to asterisk go into that?" I asked. Xi blinked once. "That's not comforting." Mox added, "I am 87% certain we are entering a region that exists outside linear time and local logic. The remaining 13% is open to interpretation and spontaneous beard growth." I tightened my seatbelt. "I swear if I come out of this with a mustache that whispers secrets, I'm suing someone." The ship shuddered as we crossed the boundary. The stars outside warped, stretching into strange spirals. Space made a sound I'm pretty sure space isn't supposed to make, like a choir gargling metal. Then silence, complete, deafening, impossible. And then, we weren't in the same place anymore. Our ship floated in what looked like space but felt layered. Behind every star was another, fainter one. Behind that, a color I couldn't name. My brain tried to label it ultra-chartreuse, and then gave up. Sensors blinked erratically. Mox let out a digital groan. "I just got emotionally insulted by the physics engine of this place. I don't even have asterisk feelings, and I'm offended." She stood. "We close." "To what?" I asked. She pointed ahead. There, barely visible, floated a structure, circular, enormous, and flickering between states like it couldn't decide whether to exist. Mox zoomed in. "That's a pocket array, forbidden tech, built to operate between folds in spacetime, probably powered by quantum regret and really bad ethics." Xi guided us toward it. As we approached, the ship shuddered again. Something reached out, not physically, but through the sensors, through the wiring, through me. I jerked back in my seat. Did something just asterisk sniff my thoughts? "Yes," Mox replied, "and I think it licked one." We docked. The airlock groaned open with a sound like a sigh from a disappointed librarian. Xi went first. I followed with significantly more hesitation, and my finger hovering over the run away screaming asterisk button on my wrist pad. Inside, the station was stranger than anything we'd seen. The architecture changed as we moved, walls reconfiguring, colors pulsing to the rhythm of our steps. Once I turned around and the hallway behind us was gone. It was now a garden full of floating stones and whispering flowers. I did asterisk not sniff them. She led us down a corridor that didn't exist until she touched the wall. At the end, a chamber, circular, dim, and filled with pods, dozens of them, each holding a figure, some Durellari, some not, all unconscious. Mox's voice dropped. They're suspended in a cross-dimensional stasis field. No aging, no decay, no dreams. Ji approached one pod and pressed her hand to the glass. The figure inside, a girl, younger, similar features, didn't move. Family? I asked softly. Ji nodded once. I turned to Mox. How do we wake them up? I don't know, but the field is unstable. Someone has been tampering with it recently. Let me guess, Sable directive. The floor shivered. Then a voice echoed through the chamber, metallic, distorted. You should not be here. We turned. A figure stood at the far end, cloaked, face obscured by a shifting mask that reflected back our own images, except I looked like I hadn't slept in a month, and Ji looked like a war goddess with extra cheekbones. Okay, I said. So we're in the villain monologue zone. Got it. The figure didn't move. You cannot undo the design. Ji stepped forward. You took them. We saved them, from themselves, from you. That got a reaction. Ji's skin flared gold, bright and furious. You broke the harmony, the figure said. You bonded with an outsider, you infected the code. I raised my hand. I'm sorry, am I the infection here? I just gave her water and bandaged a wound. The bonding thing was not clearly labeled. Ji reached for her blade. The figure raised a hand, the room shook, the pods flickered. Mox whispered, he's using the field to manipulate the stasis, if he destabilizes it too much. Ji charged, I don't know what I expected, some elegant duel maybe. Instead, Ji teleported. One blink and she was already at the figure's side, blade clashing against a shield of light that shimmered with too many angles. The fight was fast. The first one to wake up was a small boy with silver eyes and hair like smoke. He opened his eyes, blinked at the glowing pod lid, and immediately sneezed. Loudly. Ji rushed forward with a grace that made me feel like a folding chair with legs. She helped him sit up. He blinked at her, tilted his head, and then with great effort punched her shoulder. Lightly, Mox translated, he said, took you long enough. I liked him already. The rest began to stir one by one. Adults, children, elders, some with armor-like markings on their skin, some still tangled in sleep. They looked around as if trying to remember what time even was. I knew the feeling. Ji moved among them like a thread weaving cloth, exchanging brief words, quick touches. Her face didn't show much, but her skin glowed with the warmth of someone remembering the taste of home. Meanwhile, I tried not to stand out like a non-biodegradable spoon in a soup of interdimensional aliens. I failed. I said, giving a little wave to a group of Durellari who were definitely analyzing my entire molecular structure. High human brought snacks, don't panic. They stared, one raised a brow ridge, another sniffed me. Ji came to my side, nodded to them, and said something short. The effect was immediate, they relaxed. The one who had sniffed me even patted my shoulder. Mox's voice clicked in. She told them you are under her protection, and also that you bruise easily. Rude, accurate, but rude. A taller Durellari approached. An elder, judging by the slow grace in her steps and the wisdom lines etched across her skin like constellations. She studied me the way a scientist might study a meatball with quantum properties. She spoke, Mox translated. She says, you bear the scent of broken code, but your presence has not corrupted the sequence. Then she adds, you are shaped like an accident, but perhaps a useful one. That might be the most poetic insult I've ever received. Ji looked at me, then at the elder, and said something fast. Mox struggled to keep up. She said, he is strange, but he is mine. I choked on nothing. She what? The elder nodded, apparently satisfied. Then she reached out and booped me on the forehead. Ji smirked. I whispered, what was that? Blessing, Mox said. Possibly also a mild neurological scan you passed. Well, great. Now I've been booped into interstellar matrimony. The newly awakened Durellari began moving through the station, touching walls, reconnecting systems. They moved in sync, like dancers with ancient muscle memory. Some of them looked to Ji as she gave quiet instructions. Others looked at me like I was a very odd pet they were debating whether or not to adopt. Eventually, Ji led me to a quiet alcove off the main chamber. She held out a small object, metal oval with strange script along its edge. I took it. What's this? She touched her chest, then pointed to the device. Is it yours? She nodded. Why are you giving it to me? You are part, she said. Part of what? Of this, she answered and tapped her chest again. Of me. Mox made a tiny, dramatic gasp. She's giving you her memory shard. This is serious. That's like a Durellari mixtape of the soul. I stared at the object. It pulsed faintly in my palm. I don't know what to do with this, I admitted. Keep safe, G said. Hold if lost. Define lost. Like emotionally, spiritually, literally. She smiled just slightly. Yes. Later, as the station hummed with new life, the elder addressed the gathered survivors. G stood beside her, tall and silent. I stood beside G, mostly trying to look like I hadn't wandered in by accident. The elder spoke for a long time. Mox summarized in my ear. She's thanking G for returning the fractured, for restoring the silence. Then she says the others will begin the process of realignment, reclaiming their place across the folds. Reclaiming their place sounded like it involved paperwork, possibly political galas. I already wanted to go back to my broken cartography console and pretend lines mattered. The elder continued. Mox hummed. Oh, now this is interesting. She's inviting G to return, to stay, to lead. I looked at G. She looked at me. Do you want that? I asked quietly. G didn't answer. Instead, after the speech, she walked with me through a dim corridor of the station, away from the others. We sat near a viewport that overlooked the fracture zone. Outside, reality still pulsed weirdly but less aggressively, like the universe had finally exhaled. She was silent a long time. Then she said, I was not made for leading. You kind of already did. She tilted her head. You helped. Sure, I pressed a lot of buttons and shouted helpful things like, what's that do? And please don't stab me. She reached over and tapped the memory shard in my pocket. Still helped. I exhaled slowly. So what now? She leaned back, arms behind her head. Now we eat. I blinked. I love that answer. Dinner came in the form of gathered supplies from deep storage. Most of it was either freeze-dried or suspiciously jiggly. One dish quivered with what I hoped was cultural pride and not internal combustion. G offered me a slice. I took it, poked it, then made a brave noise and bit in. Sweet, I said, surprised, and crunchy. G nodded, seeds, starlit fruit. Not bad, tastes like candied gravel. She smiled, you eat strange. Thank you, I've had years of practice. As the others settled into their restored sanctuary, Mox buzzed. Not to ruin the moment, but the rift's resonance is dropping. This place won't stay between folds forever. It's stabilizing, which means it'll become part of normal space again, traceable. They'll come looking, I said. Sable Directive doesn't like its toys stolen. She nodded, we go soon. But where? She paused, away until safe. Then we decide. I nodded. Okay, but just so we're clear, I don't have a destination in mind, no plan, just snacks. She held up another protein bar. Lemon flavor, I grinned. You asterisk do get me. We left the next day. She didn't say goodbye to everyone. Just the elder, the boy who had punched her, and one tall figure who hugged her so tightly I thought bones were going to be exchanged. I waited nearby, pretending to be fascinated by a wall panel. Once on the ship, we launched quietly. No ceremony, no fanfare, just two travelers in a stolen stealth cruiser loaded with vague purpose and poor navigation. Mox plotted a course, somewhere quiet, somewhere unremarkable. She leaned back in her chair, boots up on the dash. Somewhere warm, I added. She looked at me. Warm is good. I glanced at her, then at the stars stretching before us. You know, I said, for someone I accidentally proposed to via snack exchange, you turned out okay. She replied, you are strange, but you are mine. Mox groaned audibly. I'm filing that under gross emotional progress. The ship jumped to light speed, and for the first time in a long while I didn't feel lost. Just in motion. The ship drifted in orbit above a quiet moon shaped like a lopsided teardrop. The surface below glowed faintly with bioluminescent moss, pulsing like the moon itself had a heartbeat and was mildly enthusiastic about hosting visitors. No patrols, no transmissions. No ancient evils trying to splice DNA with toaster ovens. Are we officially on vacation? I asked, staring out the viewport with a mouthful of imported spicy algae chips. She nodded without looking up from the tablet in her hand. She was reviewing a local map I had hastily sketched with about the same accuracy as a caffeinated child with a crayon. She didn't correct any of it, which I took as a sign of personal growth. Mox buzzed from the console. We are between coordinates, contracts, conspiracies, and interstellar threats. Congratulations, you have achieved a moment of peace. Don't get used to it. I tossed a chip at the console. It bounced off. She caught it midair and ate it. I blinked. I feel like that should have been a metaphor for something, I said. She grinned. For trust. That or chip theft. Outside, the stars didn't try to kill us. That was new. We'd been here for 3 days. No urgent messages. No bounty pings. The last encrypted packet mocks intercepted from the Sable directive simply read, subject missing. Protocol pending. Which, frankly, sounded more like bureaucratic dread than active pursuit. She spent her mornings meditating in the ship's microgarden. I spent mine trying to teach her how to play a card game I made up using old ration wrappers and some magnets. She'd beaten me 9 times out of 10. We didn't talk much about what happened in the rift. Not because we were avoiding it, but because neither of us really knew how to explain what it had done to us. You glow different now, she said once casually while adjusting the solar alignment panels. I raised an eyebrow. Like physically glow or emotionally? Yes, Mock's not missing a beat added. You've become 6% less emotionally avoidant. I ran diagnostics. Only 6. She smiled. Progress. We received a transmission on the 4th day. Not an emergency, not a distress signal, just a personal message. It was from the Durellari Elder. She appeared as a soft projection in the center of the cabin, seated, regal, with her expression unreadable in that "I've seen everything and will judge you politely" asterisk way. She spoke slowly. Mox translated as she went. She thanks us for returning the lost. She says the sanctuary has transitioned to stable space and is now hidden again, protected by the collective. No further incursions have been detected. The fracture is closing, permanently. She bowed slightly. I mirrored her, though mine probably looked more like a vertebrae protest. The elder continued. She says you are inconveniently necessary. I blinked. Is that a compliment? It is approval, G said. Mox added. Possibly even affection. If she sends you a cloak next, consider yourself family. The elder paused, then added something final. She says G has the right to choose, stay, lead, or walk a new path. The transmission ended. G looked at me. Choice, she said. I leaned back. So, you want to go back? She was quiet a long time. Then, no. I didn't ask why. She already had. She stood, stretched, and reached into the storage compartment. From it, she pulled a small device. Familiar, the memory shard. She held it up. For you, she said. New. I took it carefully. New. She nodded. Us, recorded from now. I slid it into my wrist pad. A playback began moments from the past few days, her laughing as I tripped.